Hi everybody, it's good to be back with you. So we're going to be looking at the resurrection of Jesus because that's the foundation of our faith. I'm going to start by addressing two objections that are kind of opposites really, but both can be levelled at Christians when we talk about the resurrection of Jesus. Firstly, I'm going to think about the objection, well, people just don't rise from the dead. It's impossible, and so the resurrection is impossible. It sounds like a reasonable thing to say. It's not our common experience, and in a sense, that's kind of why it's a miracle, because if it was happening like all the time, then it wouldn't be anything special. It'd be like, oh, no, Jesus rose from the dead too. How interesting. So did Bert last week, and so did Frank the week before. It's not like that though, is it? Because, yeah, people tend not to rise from the dead. We kind of know that people being dead is a fairly constant state for them. In fact, when my grandma had dementia and she would ask about people who had died long ago, then I'd often reply to her, oh, much the same. Yep, I think they're the same as they have been for a while. Now, it's not quite true that people don't rise from the dead. Hear me out, because I know that sounds crazy. But there's a guy called Craig Keener. He has compiled it's a 2-volume book, actually, like 900 pages odd, on miracles. He's looked into claims over the last 100, 200 years of miracles, and he's investigated them. He's kind of categorized them into type and into how much evidence there is about them. One of the miracles that he investigated is this incredible case of a guy called Jeff Markin, who died in hospital, and this Christian cardiologist called Chauncey Crandall. He went to he got a call, to come and see this guy because he was in cardiac arrest. He'd been clinically dead for 40 minutes. They were still working on him, but there was no pulse, no signs of life whatsoever. In fact, his fingers and toes and lips were turning black because of lack of oxygen. He was definitely dead, and the nurse, he called it. The nurse wrote out the death certificate and time of death, all that sort of thing. As he was leaving the room, he had this voice speaking to him saying, pray for Markham. And Chauncey was like, just shrugged it off. Why would I pray for a dead man? That's just a crazy thought that just came into my head. But this guy voice persisted. Pray for Jeff Markham. So he went back and sort of quietly stood next to the body and prayed for him. And the nurse said, what's up, Doc? Got Bugs Bunny way, probably not that's Bugs Bunny way, but what are you doing? And the Doctor Chauncey, who got his medicine degree from Yale, really respected nationwide in America as a cardiologist, said, just shock him once more for me. And they were like, well, there's really no point, but for you, we'll do it. So they give him one more shock from the defibrillator, and immediately his pulse comes back strong and regular, and in time he comes through. He needed like a quadruple heart bypass after that, but he came through and there was absolutely zero brain damage, even though his brain had been starved of oxygen for 40 minutes, and he's made a complete recovery. That is just one example. You can YouTube Markin and Crandall and hear this story more length. It's an incredible story of God working a miracle and actually raising someone from the dead. But that raises the opposite argument that you can get from skeptics saying, well, okay, if you're saying that people do rise from the dead, then what makes Jesus any different from all those other people that are rising from the dead? And the answer to that is that he predicted it. He told people ahead of time not only that he was going to die, which you do have some control over, but also that he was going to rise from the dead. Now, how do we know that he really did that? Because it's all very well saying, well, it says so in the Gospels, but so what? Couldn't they have been forged or tampered with? Well, here are just a few reasons why we can trust that Jesus really did predict his resurrection. First of all, the accounts are really early. I mean, we've spoken before about how early the Gospels were written, but some of these predictions you can see in the figures of speech, like when he refers to Simon as Simon, son of John, or the expression flesh and blood, or will not overpower. These little phrases that pop up in different bits of the Gospels when he's predicting his resurrection, they have Aramaic roots, which means that they go back beyond the Greek in which the Gospels were written, right back to like the words that Jesus said, because he'd have spoken Aramaic. For example, in Mark 9:31, then in the Aramaic, then it's very clear that Jesus is having a play on words where he says the Son of Man is handed into the hands of man, and in the Aramaic it's really clear, whereas it doesn't quite translate properly, but you can see that it's coming from Aramaic. There are multiple attestations. Now, in ancient history, if you've got two independent sources saying something, then it's like amazing. It's like, wow, this definitely happened. In the Bible, in the Gospels, there are up to 19 independent examples of where Mark, independent stuff from Matthew, independent stuff from Luke and John, are all attesting independently to Jesus predicting his resurrection. There's the criterion of embarrassment. That is to say, people are less likely to make up stuff that's embarrassing about themselves than stuff that really makes them look great. And we see that the classic example of this is when Peter rebukes Jesus, when Jesus says that he's going to die and be raised from the dead. Peter takes him on and says, "No, don't be stupid, Lord. You're not going to die. This isn't going to happen to you." And immediately Jesus turns back to him and says, "Get behind me, Satan." And there's this like full-on clash between them, which you wouldn't write if you're trying to make it up. There's a lack of kind of putting theological overtones on stuff. In the work of Josephus, there's a classic passage there that talks about Jesus, and it's even more classic because you can see that later Christian editors have tried to sort of embellish what Josephus wrote to put, like, he was the Lord and he was a man, if you could even call him a man, for he was so great. You don't get that in the gospel accounts. You just get the record of what they said. And finally, lots of the predictions use this Son of Man formula. The Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests. The Son of Man will die and rise again. And it's only Jesus in the entirety of the Bible, in the entirety of the early church, it's only Jesus that uses the phrase Son of Man about himself, which really, really strongly implies that this was something that Jesus really said. So we've got all of those different reasons for why we can be pretty certain, with a very, very high probability, that Jesus genuinely did predict that not only would he die, but that he would rise again. That's what makes Jesus's resurrection different from these other miracle accounts like the Markin and Chandel account. So yes, God does cause miracles, that it can even raise the dead. But yes, Jesus is a particularly special example. Next week, we're going to continue to think more and more about the resurrection. Until then, God bless and take care.